Welcome back. I'm Brian Calfano along with Amy Blancett and Nick Reed, our Ozarks first contributors. And folks, we've got a potential impeachment coming up. Hasn't happened yet, but that got me thinking, if the House decides to take up the impeachment vote, and if the Democrats prevail in that vote, which I'm assuming we probably all think they will if they get to that point, but let's just assume that happens, that would make Donald Trump the third impeached president in American history. And the most recently impeached prior to President Trump, again, if that happens, would have been Democrat William Jefferson Clinton. Republicans were very keen on Clinton's impeachment in late 1998, but now they don't seem to see too much good coming from an impeachment of the current office holder. So that, of course, looks to me like a great topic to figure out what has changed. There have been things that went on. The question is, should he be impeached over them? Clinton lied under oath regarding, I guess it was the Paula Jones affair. What's the deal here? We got Republicans thinking impeachment's a bad word, but 20 years ago it was good.
Well, part of the difficulty is we don't even know what they're really looking at for impeachment. As you mentioned, Clinton, there were very specific articles of impeachment. One was, and he would get disbarred, and that disbarment was because he committed perjury. And so perjury was one of the items. There were actually four, two of which failed. I think maybe obstruction of justice was the other, but I forget. So there were very, very specific occurrences that happened that nobody really denied. It was just, okay, does this warrant his removal? And so with Trump right now, and I see these polls, should he be impeached, should he be removed? There aren't even articles for what. It would be like a jury coming in and sitting down. Yeah. They're like, see this guy over here, guilty or not guilty? Well, what are the charges? Well, we haven't decided that yet exactly, but
it's coming.
Guilty or not, yeah, but it's coming. So it's very
here's the deal.
hard.
Assuming that they'll have stuff and it'll deal with...
Well, you can't, so to answer your question, I can't really say what the difference is because there isn't anything to compare it to right now.
Mm-hmm. But let's say obstruction of justice.
Well, I mean, if there is obstruction of justice, then yeah, that's something to discuss, but they have to show where this happened or, give evidence or examples of it happening. That's what they've got to do.
So, and then beyond that, the idea of the quid pro quo, does that break any law, technically?
In fact, all of this came up. We do quid pro quo all the time. In fact, right now, one of the big foreign policy elements of most of the Democrats is a quid pro quo on Israel. And they've been out there campaigning in Iowa. I will withhold aid as president of the United States unless they do what I want them to do when it comes to dealing with the Palestinians. That's how we decide who we give our money to.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how we decide. We don't just say first come, first serve. You want money, these are the conditions. So it isn't illegal. We do it all the time, and in fact, Mulvaney, I believe, was the one that came under all this fire several weeks ago because he said, "Hey, this is what we do," and they jumped all over it. He admits it. No, these are the things that are done.
But what about the idea of investigating Biden?
So this is interesting to me because let's say for a moment that it was totally political and that he said, yes, I want you to investigate specifically.
And he really meant a quid pro quo.
And he did that. Let's say it was done for that reason. Okay, if we say any president is not able to do that, then you are giving a green light to every political opposition of a sitting president to violate any laws they want because the president, cannot have an attorney general that looks into it or investigates it. Because if there's a call for an investigation into it, well, you're asking for, your political opponent to be looked after. I don't think we want that system because it gives total free rein to the opposition. And the flip side of it, I don't think that when Obama was president, if, Dick Cheney was found to have done or potentially something illegal and they said, we need to really investigate over there in Iraq to see if Dick Cheney, I don't think we'd be calling for Obama's impeachment at the time because of that, nor should we. I mean, if there is evidence of a crime and there's a criminal investigation, it should not matter what their politics are as to whether or not we look into it.
All right, so Amy, I know this is an incomplete story in regard to President Trump.
Well, let's talk about it anyway.
But as of now, what's the sniff test for you? Does it seem like it warrants impeachment or not?
The bigger thing that I think in these polls, and you had said, should he be impeached and removed? And I think that we forget like impeachment does not mean removed. Impeachment means that we're identifying that there was something that he did that is against law, regulation, and that sort. And so we are acknowledging that as a president, something was done wrong. As we saw in Clinton, that doesn't mean removal from office. So I think we're using false stories in media, we're hyping this up, which I mean never happens, and creating the wrong sense. So people are thinking, oh, impeachment means the president's going to leave, and I don't like his views, so yes, be impeached. And we're really not talking about removal. So I think a lot of it is coming back to confusion. We forget the lessons that we learned because that was 20 years ago. And so, I mean, do I think he's going to be impeached with the hype and all? That's what everyone wants. But I think they want it because they don't truly understand what it means.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that is so important to understand. I look at impeachment like an indictment. This is where this is the indictment, and the Senate is where the trial is held. Supreme Court, probably John Roberts would preside over it. There are lawyers. You have subpoena power, and then 2/3 of the Senate have to vote as to whether to convict or not. But what we think of everything monolithically, and you think, oh, well, polls show most Democrats, let's say the polls show most Democrats support impeachment. So those are national polls, but you have a lot of Democrats that are members of Congress that live and represent areas that don't necessarily feel that way.
Well, let's say it does happen, though, the impeachment, which means then there'd be a trial, there'd be all kinds of speculation about it.
And that's a huge risk.
At the same time, the Democrats are trying to figure out who their nominee is going to be.
Andrew Yang spoke about that on should we...
Nick's smiling like, this is great.
See? Yeah, so the Republicans are like, hey, let's drag this out right into the first of the year when the party should be focused on their candidate, and let's keep this on the media, about Trump. It's a horrible, horrible idea when it comes to timing and what's going to happen in the elections. Well, and we're seeing the Democratic candidates start saying, hey, not a good idea. Like, how is this going to happen, and how is it going to change the story of the media, which is so important?
When there's some conspiracy theories.
No.
Yes, conspiracy theories. I don't necessarily believe this. I think people think that they're more puppet masters than there actually are. That all of this has been coordinated by the Hillary Clinton people in order to do just what you're saying, to get Elizabeth Warren off the campaign trail, to get Bernie Sanders off the campaign trail, so that she is able to come in and fill that void because they're not able to be out there and campaign.
This is to be continued, but I thought it was an interesting exercise. So thanks you two for your
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, as always.
Predicting the future.
That's right. The Crystal Ball with Nick Reed and Amy Blanchett. Folks, we'll be back after this.